daycare for my son, and then $68 left over to pay anything else that I possibly could. I understand the importance of daycare, and I feel that if the state also felt the importance of it, they would have budgeted correctly on it. Sorry. My question for you is, children did not create our country's economic collapse, but children are the ones who are hurting the most from the state budget cuts. What would you do to create a huge and permanent source of revenue in early childhood education programs so New Mexico parents and children always have what they need in good economic times and in bad?
You know, that's a very good question. In fact, Senator Lopez had touched on it just a moment ago, that in '03, we did have tax cuts that were given out to the most wealthy and then also to the middle class. It was a huge tax cut. And if we would have just realized how porous the foundation of government was, because we just had come out of 8 years of Johnson's administration, which really did not help government, did not help early childhood, did not help education, did not help government become strong. You know what? We had a real weak government at the time. We should never have looked at an '03 tax cut. In fact, when we were looking at that tax cut, we in the House of Representatives put what we called triggers on that bill, as if the economy would go down, it would trigger them and reappeal those taxes where they would be kicked back in. But in the Senate, they took the triggers out, and we had our tax bill of '03. So that to cover that issue of good times and bad times, that would have taken care of that issue. But now we go on. Now, when we looked at this last legislative session and what was being proposed, we did look at a broad base of tax increases, and many of them did pass. But a few of them that would have really helped would have been the surtax, that would have pulled back some of that tax cut of '03, would have pulled that money back to where we wouldn't have had these cuts in education and in Medicaid and taking care of these issues. That's what we should have done. And I personally do feel it is a Band-Aid, but right now we need that Band-Aid because so many families are hurting. It is now, you know, we have people that would be able to do better on unemployment than having to go work and have to pay for their health care. So what are we talking about? The taxes are coming from one place to the other, but we're not being logical about it, about keeping people productive and helping support them through a proper way of giving quality early childhood care. So what we need to do is to really reevaluate, be smart, look at things 5, 10, 15 years down the road. I keep on reiterating these issues because we as legislators, we run every 2 years, and that's what we do. We put Band-Aids on everything. It's about creating a new economy for the state of New Mexico of high-paying jobs, because why? When you get paid more, you pay more taxes. And that way, 58% of our college graduates won't have to leave the state of New Mexico. We need to create a new economy for the state of New Mexico, and renewable energy is going to be that route. And that's been one of my issues that I've been pushing for 7 years, is renewable energy and being a national leader for that.
I think we started this evening talking about revenue streams. We can talk about efficiencies in government, cutting waste, fraud, and abuse, and all that is very important, and we will realize some extra revenues if we do that. But as I said earlier, we have to reevaluate the tax rollbacks of 2003. There is just no question about it. When you give the wealthiest of New Mexicans a 40% tax relief, we're going to have to put that back on the table. When times are good, maybe we can look at those kinds of tax cuts, but times aren't good. We are hurting in New Mexico. When I go down to Luna County and there's 20% unemployment, those folks are in trouble. We have got to do something to lift up those communities, and we have to do it in all 33 counties. We can't just do it here in Bernalillo County. We're hurting here in Bernalillo, but let me tell you, when I went up to Cuesta today to unveil the largest concentrating photovoltaic solar array in the entire country, when we broke that ground today, those folks in that community are scared. They're scared about the economy. They're scared about what they're going to do with their children. And Sherry, I care a lot about Jaden. I met your son earlier. He is a sweetheart. And we're going to make sure that we think about Jaden when we're on that 4th floor of the Roundhouse. Thank you for bringing him tonight. He's a great kid.
That's 5, number 1.
We'll figure this one out. We'll get it. When you talk about funding, permanent funding, that has been always something that we have worked for in the New Mexico legislature. Those of us who have labored long and hard to try and convince the other part, the other groups, and what I think the dance is that we have. But we're prevailing, and we'll continue to work on it and chip away at this money problem. But when you talk about the tax cuts, there were a few of us who stood against that 2003 tax cut. I was one of them. In 2004, when we came back, I introduced a bill to reestablish. In fact, Senator Ortiz-Pino signed on with his first year with me and a couple other brave souls that did that, to the ire of the governor and to the ire of members of the House and the Senate too. We have to look to that little chunk of change, which is over up to at least $600 million that we've been losing. It's a lot of money. That could make or break us, and it does break us. Those are things we have to look at. And those are things that I will be committed to continue to working at. But we have to have the advocacy groups, for those of you who are here, to continue to work with us, to continue to remind us, because one person can't do it. Those of you who are here are the ones who are at the forefront and understand these issues. And you have to also lobby the legislature. The legislature is the primary driver. They have to crack the whip on them, crack the whip on us. Thank you.
There are two parts to the answer. Grow the pot so that there's more money in the pot to divvy up among all the different programs, and then change the way we include childcare in which part of the pot it's included. Right now, we say 40% of the state budget goes to K-12 education, 20% goes to higher ed, 20% goes to Medicaid, and all the rest of state government, including childcare, child welfare, police, prisons, everything else comes out of 20% of the budget. That's the part of the budget that took the big hit this year. Schools only got 3% cut only. That's why teachers are being laid off. It's bad enough. But all the rest of it took a 20%. I mean, it took a 17% cut. That last 20% did. We need to grow the pot so that that's different, but we also need to move childcare into the education piece of the budget so that they wouldn't be cut along with some of the other things. We need to grow the budget, I think, by going back and reinvigorating our housing industry. That's where we took the big hit. We went from 7,000 housing starts 2 years ago to less than 900 last year. That's where the unemployment came. That's where the loss of tax monies came.
Thank you very much. And first, let me say that it's good to be here. And I want to ask all of you a question. I want you all to think about this answer before you raise your hands. How many of you would support a candidate running for governor of the state of New Mexico or lieutenant governor if they stood up here and told you we're going to raise your taxes? Then you're the kind of people that need to be at the legislature talking to legislators. Because let me tell you, when I'm walking around and talking to people in New Mexico, and I ask that question, people don't raise their hands. And that's because a lot of families are struggling today to make ends meet. And the dilemma that we have is that we have segregated education and childcare in our budget, and we treat them as separate components. Education and childcare are in the same budget, and they should be in the same budget, because it is about supporting children early on in their life and putting them in a system that is supportive to the educational program. So I would tell you that the very first thing I would do is put education and childcare together. Secondly, I would say that we need to grow the pie, but we need to grow the pie by creating better jobs and creating economic development and bringing more jobs to New Mexico. If we get more jobs in the state, we'll grow the economy and we'll have more people paying revenue back into the system. It is about education and economic development coming together. But I will tell you, you all are a very minority. Many people, when we ask that question, look at us and say, we're not going to vote for anybody who's going to tax me. I'm already been taxed too much. We've got to prioritize our budgets. And the way we prioritize our budgets is we think of our children and we think of education. And if we can't do that, and I'm sorry to say this, I've got legislators who have been in the legislature for a long time. They tell you about what went wrong. We need to do something, and someone who can do something right. I've done that, and I would ask your support.
Thank you.